This is 5 on 20 News, where the year has been a roller coaster ride, but the newscasters will help get your feet firmly back on the ground, with Ani Esquintela
and Nick Cerami,
coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. Today, we're going to take one last look back on the mess that was 2016.
If you are a woman, a musician, a Muslim, or really anyone that isn't a white man, the last 12 months have been pretty scary. For example, 60 new abortion restrictions were passed in 19 states during 2016, proving that Congress can get something done as long as it involves denying women their rights. Yes, this is a year that may go down in history as the year that the gods abandoned us, but among all the heavy lows, there were a smattering of bright spots. Sure, we elected a demagogue reality star, but we were able to find solace and amusement in the evil Kermit meme. Unemployment dropped to the lowest levels since 2007, and Beyoncé's visual album thrilled the world. But let's start from the beginning and walk you back through the highlights and the heartbreaks.
2016 started off happily enough with the release of Jason Rezaian, a Washington Post reporter who had been imprisoned by Iran for suspected spying. Rezaian was held in solitary confinement for 49 days in Iran and walked around his 8x8 cell for 5 hours a day for exercise, proving that Iranian prisoners are in better shape than most Americans. The happy release was tainted by a supposed conspiracy involving a multi-million-dollar payment to the Iranian government the previous month. It turned out that the payment was mandated by the UN and was owed since the late 70s. As we would see later in the year, the truth meant nothing to those wanting to create fake stories.
Things started to look a little scary in late January as a small group of armed men took over a national wildlife preserve in Oregon. Ammon Bundy and his pals battled the government over land that they said belonged to them. Why? Because they really wanted it. Bundy went on an economic tirade saying that he wanted loggers to go back to logging, ranchers to go back to ranching, and psychopathic gun nuts to go back to losing their minds and shooting at people.
Okay, now things are definitely getting bad. Flint, Michigan's water crisis was discovered in late January as officials learned that the city's water supply was tainted by lead, something residents knew for months but kept forgetting not to drink the water due to lead poisoning. 6 public workers were later charged with being responsible for the pollution, which occurred when the city switched their water source to the Flint River, a river so dirty that it led to a school of smallmouth bass launching a lawsuit against the EPA. To date, very little has been done to improve Flint's water supply, but incoming President Donald Trump says that he will drain the swamp and fill it with a very, very, very lot of bottles of water. So many bottles of water, it'll be terrific. You'll love me.
And who knew Sean Penn could be so wily? The actor met with notorious Mexican drug kingpin El Chapo for an interview for Rolling Stone magazine. This came days before Chapo was arrested by Mexican authorities when they were tipped off by the news of dead paparazzi lined up along the road. This came 3 months after El Chapo escaped from a Mexican prison on an underground rail system and embarrassed Mexican authorities. This time, they said they would remember to lock the door.
Rocker, icon, and resident alien David Bowie died in January, the first in a long line of celebrity deaths that continued to remind us of our fragile mortality in 2016. Bowie's death came days after the release of his album Black Star, which has shown up on tons of best-of lists this year. The rock community mourned the loss, but no one took it worse than Hoggle, who shut himself in his underground cavern and refused to come out until he got a pair of those glass balls to play with.
In February, sanctions were lifted against Iran, which we celebrated by accusing our president of being Muslim. Iran changed their signature chant from Great Satan to Not That Great, but We Cool, Satan. The Pope caught some Latin fever and shipped off to Cuba for a weekend communist bender with Fidel Castro, at least according to Breitbart. The dopest Pope in the West encouraged unity among the world's religions and called for the ending of sanctions against Cubans. The 12 remaining practicing Catholics in the U.S. characteristically shrugged their shoulders. Einstein's theory of gravity was proven true, or so we're told. Scientists were giddy at making us feel stupid, as most Americans agreed on one thing this year: we don't get it.
In obligatory death news, conservative Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia chose to die rather than celebrate Black History Month. His death was followed by an awkward conversation with David Bowie as they both waited at the pearly gates.
March was a slow month, with the biggest news being the announcement that Harriet Tubman would be replacing slave owner Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. Enjoy it, because by 2018, the 20 is probably going to look a bit more orange.
In April, Beyoncé delivered her earth-shattering album Lemonade, along with a visual album that ran on HBO before being released for purchase. The record seems to document infidelity in Beyoncé's own life, sending social media users into a whirlwind trying to determine who the Becky was that was betting Jay-Z behind Bey's back. TV chef Rachel Ray was mistakenly targeted with vitriol by Beehivers when rumblings of fashion designer Rachel Roy being the mistress were spurred on by the designer's own social media post. Regardless of the goofy stuff, Beyoncé's second visual album was dynamic, bewitching, and upped the ante on what we expect from artists.
More importantly, April brought the bombshell of the Panama Papers, documents that implicated many of the world's richest citizens in tax evasion through the country of Panama. What should have been the biggest story of the year soon faded into obscurity as Americans chose to wait for the movie adaptation.
And another huge music death shook the world as we lost the beloved Purple One himself. Prince died of an overdose of fentanyl, which oddly became the star player of 2016.
In May, scientists made the Kepler discovery of over 1,000 new planets in the solar system. Yeah, I don't remember this either, but maybe next year we'll get aliens.
The country was struck with panic as the Zika virus made its way into the country. The virus was proven to cause birth defects and microcephaly in children and gave us just one more reason to hate mosquitoes.
Also in May, we saw a national controversy surrounding North Carolina's decision to allow transgender bathrooms. Opponents imagined a dystopian future where we might be sharing bathrooms with the opposite sex. Stories on Breitbart and Fox News showed instances of men faking their way into the ladies' room as if the law suddenly ignited the need for otherwise normal citizens to be professional bathroom peepers. But it was all moot in the end as North Carolina ended the law 2 weeks ago.
May's death featured a young gorilla named Harambe who was shot after a child fell into his cage. Some felt that the boy's errant mother should have been the one to be shot, but poor Harambe was chosen to be the martyr. The rest of the year saw a smattering of odd Harambe memes, with the gorilla getting more votes for president than Jill Stein. Oddly enough, Harambe also had better policy positions than Stein.
June was when things started to get really crazy. The Brits voted to leave the European Union, which shocked the part of the country that doesn't question that the Holocaust happened. Nigel Farage, Britain's racist-in-chief, declared the decision as a triumph of democracy, while opponents called it a disaster that would never realistically work in the real world, which pretty much sums up alt-right politics in a nutshell.
And a black icon died at a time when we really needed black icons. Muhammad Ali passed away after battling Parkinson's for years. The worst part is that we'll never get to see a classic Ali rant about the election of Donald Trump, where he would presumably call Trump a dastardly, bastion of bullshit bravado. He will be missed.
May is usually known for rebirth, but it turned out to be a month for deadly shootings. The Pulse nightclub in Orlando was the site of the largest mass shooting in history, with over 50 people killed by a closeted homosexual Muslim named Omar Mateen. Conservatives had a field day, but were unable to decide on whether to attack Mateen's religion or sexual preference. If Mateen had been a Hillary-supporting college professor, then they might have had a conniption. In the same month, 5 police officers were killed in Dallas by Micah Johnson, a former Marine who claimed the shooting represented Black Lives Matter. The media clung to this rather than raise the issue that many of the mass shooters in 2016 were former members of the military. It's as if the media had PTSD, post-truth selective disorder.
July presented us with a shit show known as the Republican National Convention. Charles in Charge, Scott Baio, reminded us that he was alive, while Antonio Sabato made us wonder why he was on stage. Plus, a homeless drifter jumped on stage to berate the audience before being wrestled to the ground by Mike Pence. Trump entered the stage to a gust of smoke, evidently a preview of what our country will look like in 4 years. At the Democratic convention, the Khan family got on stage and ripped the Donald a new one, criticizing him for his rhetoric about Muslims. The Khans, whose son died in Iraq, captured the nation with a brilliant speech that was 10 times more passionate than anything we would ever see from Hillary Clinton. Maybe the Khans should be running our country.
People went apeshit over Pokemon Go in July, making everyone over 40 wonder why the hell these kids were staring at their phones. Pokemon Go also caused some highly publicized pedestrian deaths. And just like the fame of Chameleonaire, Pokemon Go was done before the summer even ended. Rest in peace, Squirtle.
For the homie. The world suddenly stopped for 2 weeks as the Olympics gave us a reason to hate our bodies. American women were the big winners this year, capturing 61 gold medals, with American men getting a not-too-shabby 55 medals. It was the one time when Americans chanted USA while not wearing red hats.
As the summer died down, so did Gawker, the tabloid site known for outing celebrities and wasting our time at work. Gawker was shut down in August after being sued by wrestler Hulk Hogan, who claims that the publication stole a sex tape that he made years before. The biggest question through all of this was, why did anyone want to see a sex tape featuring a man who looks like he has hot dog casing for skin? Tech billionaire Peter Thiel largely funded the court case in revenge for Gawker outing him in an article. Thiel is now an advisor on Trump's transition team, which makes sense considering Trump's disdain for the media. Well, I guess literacy was overrated anyway.
In August, a photo of a wounded child in Aleppo shocked the world. While many had been busy ignoring Russia's assault on Syria, a picture of a stunned child covered in soot and blood was able to deliver the message of humanitarian disaster to the world. 11 million Syrians have been displaced by the war and 400,000 have been killed since 2011. A ceasefire was agreed to last week, but we'll have to wait and see how that works out.
Uber introduced the first fleet of self-driving cars in August, with robots taking to the streets of Pittsburgh. While this was originally how the robots planned to take over humanity, they got sidetracked because prices were surging. If you're a truck driver, you might want to give that resume a polish.
Oh, and by the way, August was the hottest month on record and our planet is suffocating, but on to September.
Who cares about a dying planet when you've got Hillary Clinton's emails? Not a day would go by when we didn't hear about what Bernie dubbed those damn emails. No one got around to actually reading them, but they're secret emails, therefore Hillary must have killed people and been part of a satanic ritual club. It just makes sense. Also in September, EpiPen prices were raised to ungodly rates, causing an outcry by the public and cheers from the bee community. Eventually, Mylan, the company who makes the EpiPen, lowered the prices in response to public and political pressure.
And then a scandal rocked megabank Wells Fargo when it was discovered that employees falsified customer bank account applications. Many customers were charged for accounts that they never opened. The employees said that they were pressured by management, a claim that was later found to be true. CEO John Stump was punished by being allowed to only take home $100 million in severance pay. Poor guy. After being fired, Stump started a GoFundMe page to pay for daily essentials until he got back on his feet.
In October, Kim Kardashian was robbed in Paris. And while we all worried about Kim K, Hurricane Matthew raged throughout the southern U.S., causing $4 to $6 billion in damages. And while we cried for our country, it turns out that Haiti got the worst of it because it's Haiti, and they always get the worst of it. Haitians soon lined up at the Mexican border to try and seek asylum in the U.S. Boy, did they pick the wrong time.
And then Bob Dylan became the first musician in history to win a Nobel Prize, which you would think was a big deal. Not for Bobby D, who appeared burdened by the announcement. For weeks, Dylan refused to answer the Nobel Committee as if they were bill collectors. He eventually released a statement thanking the committee but refusing to go to the ceremony. Instead, he sent punk rocker Patti Smith, which was quite possibly the most Bob Dylan-ish thing ever. Don't ever change, Bob.
Creepiness invaded our streets and our nightmares as a rash of reported clown attacks spread across the country. This culminated in an Arizona march called Clown Lives Matter, which was eventually canceled, probably because, contrary to the march's name, no one likes clowns.
As Halloween drew near, protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline heated up in North Dakota. The pipeline would carry oil from Canada through what tribal leaders said was sacred land. Police sprayed protesters with freezing water, claiming that they were trying to cool them off, despite the weather approaching freezing temperatures. But eventually protesters won and the pipeline project was shut down, at least until Donald Trump is inaugurated, when we'll probably see a round two.
The Cubs win. The Cubs won. Yes, it's true. For the first time since 1908, the Cubs won the World Series. For one day, we got to forget how much the world sucks and watch Bill Murray celebrate with everyone in Chicago. Speaking of which, why didn't Bill Murray run for president in 2016? Who doesn't like Bill Murray?
Unfortunately, someone else who likes to throw his balls around also won. That's right, November was the month where America lost its mind and decided that a living, breathing Kid Rock album would make a terrific president. The image of Trump making that acceptance speech made the nation collectively think that their drinks were spiked by LSD. White supremacists cheered, Republicans learned to stop worrying and love Mother Russia, and the whole world instantly twisted upside down. And we thought Prince's death would be the worst of it. You know, whenever you hear the phrase, anyone can be president someday, it was supposed to be inspirational, not frightening. But the point was proven. Anyone, even a racist, cocky, self-absorbed, unintelligent grapefruit who barely has a grasp on the English language can become president. Hooray?
But November wasn't totally dark. A new vaccine against HIV entered the clinical trial phase in South Africa. Experts hope it will be the final nail in the coffin for HIV. And the Paris Climate Change Agreement went into effect. This marked the first time that governments have agreed to legally binding limits to global temperature rises. Environmental groups celebrated the accord but said even more drastic measures were needed. And, of course, we had the mannequin challenge.
But then, just in time for Christmas, we witnessed the horrific fire at the Ghost Ship, an art space in Oakland. Indie bands everywhere worried that where they would play and sleep following calls for closer inspections of art spaces. But don't worry, this is America, where we forget about things like this after a few months, for better or for worse. Also in December, a terrorist drove a truck into the heart of a Berlin Christmas market, claiming the lives of 12 and injuring many others.
And the year ended with so many celebrity deaths that it looked as if 2016 was trying to fill a quota before the year ended. One internet meme maker conjectured that David Bowie was handpicking individuals for his own personal afterlife paradise. If only. George Michael, Carrie Fisher, and her mother, Debbie Reynolds, all died within days of each other, making Star Wars Rogue One even more painful to watch.
We've heard it been said, and we'll say it again. Screw you, 2016. Here's to a new year, hopefully full of good fortune and happiness. That is, if Donald Trump is impeached and Mike Pence gets caught smoking meth out of a John's ass in a bathhouse somewhere. All we can do is hope. This was Anias Quintella.
And Nick Cerami.
For 5 on 20 News. And now, we'll stop looking back and start looking forward. Hopefully it'll get better, but whichever way things go, we'll be here, reporting the news of Tucson and the world from our point of view. With this project, we are undertaking a new kind of citizen journalism, and we want more people to speak up with us. If you're interested in joining us, shoot an email to info@creativetucson.org and join the conversation at facebook.com/5, FIVE on 2020. Good night, Tucson. See you tomorrow.